I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't following a strange dream or drawn by some cryptic note tucked inside a library book. I was just trying to get home. That's what makes it so hard to explain. How something like this could begin with nothing. With a tired body, a late bus, a woman who just wanted a seat near the window, and to forget everything behind her. Union Station was alive that day, but in the wrong way. The kind of life that rots beneath a plaster smile. The departure board flickered violently, skipping numbers. An alarm sounded somewhere behind me, but no one reacted. My bus ticket said gate 47A. That wasn't a gate, I remembered, and I've passed through Union Station more times than I care to count. Something about the number 47A itched at the back of my mind. Too specific, too deliberate. I looked for help, but no one was working the counters. Not really. A man stood at a kiosk, pretending to scroll, but he never blinked. Another woman behind a glass wall smiled at nothing. Then I saw it. A crooked paper sign, taped to a far-off wall, written in thick black marker, Gate 47A, temporary access. It pointed to a hallway I swear wasn't there yesterday. No signage, no travelers, no natural light. Just a corridor cut into the building like a surgical wound. I should have walked away, but I didn't. The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. Not colder, not heavier, just less real. Like the world had taken a breath and decided not to exhale. Behind me, the lights of the main terminal dimmed. I took one more look back, hoping for an excuse not to go in. There wasn't one, so I kept walking. The hallway swallowed sound. Even my footsteps, sharp at first on tile, began to soften, like the floor was learning how to muffle me. The walls were the color of old hospital paint. Green turned sickly gray, the kind that made everything feel colder. Every few feet, a light flickered overhead, buzzing irregularly like a failing insect trap. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd see a gate soon, that it would all make sense if I just kept moving. But time slid strangely here, like walking through water that didn't touch you. My sense of forward motion dissolved into sameness. There were no doors, no signs, no change in texture, just a corridor that curved ever so slightly to the left, like it was coiling around me. Eventually, I stopped. I turned around. The entrance I came through was gone. Not closed, gone. Replaced by more hallway. Identical in every way. I couldn't even tell which direction was forward anymore. Panic didn't come all at once. It started as a tick in my fingers, a hollow in my throat. My brain scrambled to make the hallway logical, to assign it structure, distance, purpose. It failed. I checked my phone. No bars, no Wi-Fi. The clock blinked, 3:33 a.m., then changed to 3:36, then blinked back to 3:33, and I realized I didn't know how long I'd been walking. It could have been minutes, It could have been hours. And the strangest part was, I didn't feel tired. Not in my legs, not in my chest, not even in my mind. Only the deep, gnawing exhaustion of being somewhere you don't belong. And the space knows it. I pressed my hand to the wall. It was dry, cold, too smooth, like it hadn't been made for human skin. My own palm felt damp in comparison, alive and unwelcome. The lights above let out a low groan, not a flicker, not a spark, but a kind of long, mechanical sigh. That's when I first felt the shift. Not in the walls, not in the air, in the memory. I tried to recall the sound of the terminal before I entered. The chatter, the suitcases, the soft chaos of public noise. But the sound wouldn't come, like it had already been overwritten. Still, I kept walking, because deep down, I already knew. I couldn't go back. I don't remember seeing the door. I was walking, and then there it was, on my right, slightly ajar, a brushed metal handle, worn in the center like it had been touched too many times by people who didn't want to be there. I pushed it open. The room beyond felt wrong, familiar in shape, but hollow in spirit, a waiting area, like one you'd find in a forgotten hospital or a clinic that no longer takes patients. The chairs were bolted to the floor, molded plastic, all facing forward, all empty. There was a vending machine in the corner, softly humming to itself. It was full. I don't know why that unnerved me more than if it had been empty. The drinks inside had brands I didn't recognize. True Malt, Eclipso, Hush Cola, with labels slightly out of focus, like they were trying to copy something they didn't fully understand. I stepped further in. The air felt still, but not stale, preserved, like it hadn't moved in years, but didn't need to, like it wasn't air at all. There were no exits from the room, except the door I came through. I tried it again. It opened, but to a different room now. I stepped through and found myself in what looked like a daycare. Tiny plastic chairs arranged in a semicircle, walls covered in faded educational posters, numbers, letters, animal faces. But the smiling lion had too many teeth. Paper snowflakes dangled from the ceiling fan above, unmoving despite the fact that I could hear the motor humming softly. I saw a drawing pinned to a corkboard, a child's scrawl in crayon, a sun with no face, just a blank circle in a sky of black. Surrounding it were stick figures, all in red, all with their arms raised. One was taller than the others. That one had a square where its head should be. I didn't touch it. The next room came without warning. I turned around again and walked through the same door. Now I stood in what used to be a food court. Tables stood precisely arranged, too clean, too orderly. One tray still held a burger and fries, steam still rising from the meat. Next to it, a cup of soda fizzed audibly. I stepped closer, drawn to the sound. I touched the straw. It was warm, not recently used warm, body warm. I recoiled, backed away. When I turned to go back through the door, it had changed again. into a motel hallway, floral wallpaper peeling at the corners, thin, sour carpet underfoot. Every door down, the hall was closed, except one. I didn't approach it. I walked through a side exit and ended up in a DMV waiting room. Rows of chairs again. A number screen flashing, now serving 99. But the counter below read number, infinity. There was a faint hum in the air, like a television left on in another room. Still no people, only rooms that were too clean, too carefully arranged, like someone was trying to recreate spaces from memory. But they didn't understand what they were for. I kept moving, pulled forward not by curiosity, but by an almost gravitational tension in the air, like standing too close to a ledge or waiting in a dream for something to arrive. Then came a laundromat, silent, all machines unplugged, some with the doors open, revealing nothing inside, others with the windows fogged from the inside. I stared at one machine for too long. The condensation cleared just enough for me to see a handprint pressed against the glass from inside. 5 fingers. No palm. I didn't check the others. Each room after that was emptier than the last, not abandoned, unfinished. The edges of the walls started to blur. Floor tiles didn't match. The ceiling in one room flickered like an unfinished render, flashing between a drop tile and concrete slab, as if it were studying me. Reality wasn't deteriorating. It was being assembled on the fly, improvised, trying to guess what I expected next, and worse, getting better at it. I turned a corner and saw someone ahead of me. She was walking at a steady pace, familiar gait, same jacket, same loose ponytail drifting over one shoulder, same worn canvas bag sagging from the weight I always meant to take out. I froze. She didn't. The fluorescent lights above pulsed once too bright, and for a heartbeat, her shadow split into 2, stretching sideways like an echo. I wanted to call out, but I already knew the answer. She was me, not someone who looked like me, not a hallucination. Me down to the way my left boot drags, just slightly when I'm tired. I followed. She didn't look back. She walked through a doorway, but she didn't open it. She simply passed into it, not through, into, like fog absorbing a shape, or a dream folding in on itself. I ran forward and pushed through, and found myself standing inside a room full of mirrors, but not the kind you'd expect. No reflections, not at first. The walls were lined with old, tall mirrors set in metal frames that were bolted to the floor and ceiling. Their surfaces were dull, almost silvered over with age, and when they finally responded to me, it was wrong, delayed, fragmented. I didn't see myself as I stood. I saw myself from behind, as if a camera were watching from over my shoulder. In another mirror, I saw the side of my face, but I hadn't turned. Then another, and another. Each mirror showed me from a different angle. Some were from above, as if I were being watched from a ceiling I couldn't see. Some were at ankle height, showing my feet stepping forward before I moved. I raised my hand to wave, slowly, deliberately. Only one reflection mimicked the motion. The rest just stared, unblinking, unmoving. They weren't mirrors anymore. They were memories, or predictions. Some of them showed me walking into rooms I hadn't entered yet. One showed me sitting, frozen, on a bench I didn't recognize, hands folded on my lap, like I was waiting for something I no longer believed would arrive. Another showed me sleeping, not peacefully, not safely, just still, surrounded by a darkness that pulsed with familiarity. I stepped back. One of the mirrors didn't move. It still showed me forward, standing, staring, but I was now behind it. That's when I noticed something else. The walls had no door, no window, no way out. Just me, or hundreds of me, and each one was slightly off, a degree too still, or a half-second too late, a fraction of a different life, a moment I didn't remember living. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I was in a hallway again, but something had changed. The silence felt warm now, like the breath of a house that had started watching you back. The next door opened on its own. It didn't creak, it didn't slam. It just eased inward like it had been waiting. I stepped through and into the terminal, or something like it. It stretched far beyond what my eyes could measure, a cathedral of transit, of impossible scale. The ceiling dissolved into a hazy black above, too high to be real. The floor beneath my boots shifted texture with every step, carpet to linoleum to tile to something soft and soundless, like felt soaked in static. Rows of chairs filled the space in an exact grid, not one out of line, not one overturned. Most were empty, some were not. A few held shapes, people maybe, but too still, too pale. I saw a man with a suitcase in his lap, hands folded neatly. He wasn't breathing. His tie swayed slowly, like he was underwater. I moved on. The air had weight here, not pressure, not gravity, expectation. The entire place thrummed with a quiet urgency, like something was about to happen, or already had. Then I heard it, a massive split flap board high overhead, rattling to life. You know the sound sharp clicks as letters change, but this was faster, frantic, gibberish spilling across the board in unreadable strings. %G4RD //GAET 47A Borden 9 / RN error. The characters spun too fast. My name flickered into place, misspelled again, and vanished. Then the board stopped. Just one line remained. Gate 47A. Reconfirmation in progress. That was when I noticed the voice, a soft, genderless overhead tone, echoing across the empty dome. 47A final boarding. Please remain seated for processing. The words didn't echo properly. They felt pre-recorded, but wrong, like someone had said them in a language that mimicked English just well enough to pass in a dream. I didn't sit. I passed the chairs cautiously, careful not to touch them. Some of the seated figures flickered, literally, glitching faintly, like bad reception. A teenage girl rested her chin in her hands, but her shadow pointed the wrong way. An older man turned pages in a book, though his hands never moved. One woman swayed gently, rhythmically, without ever blinking. I turned my eyes from her. They all seemed to be waiting, not trapped, not frightened, just delayed, paused, as though the moment you sit down here, you stop belonging to time. And that's when I realized this place wasn't vast. It was crowded, not with bodies, with fragments, moments, echoes, versions of people who didn't make it back, or maybe who did, but not fully. I started walking faster, not running. Running would have meant panic, and panic would have meant I still had a chance. I passed what looked like kiosks, but they sold nothing. I passed vending machines. Each one buzzed low, like they were whispering. I didn't listen. Then, at the far end of the terminal, almost hidden in shadow, I saw it. A booth, framed in glass, waiting, and even from here, I knew it had always been waiting for me. The booth stood like a confession box at the end of a world no longer being used. It was framed in thick glass, yellowed at the corners, lit by a single weak bulb above, which hummed softly like it was dreaming. I stepped closer. The floor here had changed again. A pale rubber tile, hospital white but worn unevenly, like footsteps had been erased instead of left behind. The air smelled faintly like old film, acetate, and heat, and something organic that had dried up a long time ago. Inside the booth sat a woman. At least, she wore the shape of one. Her uniform was an old Amtrak issue, dark navy, starched collar, badge glinting with rust. But her face was all wrong. There were no eyes, not hidden, absent. Where there should have been sockets was a smooth plane of skin, as if someone had taken wax and carefully sculpted over every feature but her mouth, which was too wide, too still. Yet she spoke. 47. You've arrived early. Her voice didn't echo. It didn't vibrate. It was simply there, inside me, like remembering something I hadn't learned yet. She pushed a card through the small opening beneath the glass. I hesitated before picking it up. It felt warm, not like it had been held, but like it was alive. It was a boarding pass, tactile, textured like old leather stretched over paper. My name was printed in red block letters, the ink slightly faded at the edges, but it wasn't quite right. ARYNMILES. Reconfirmation confirmed. Not Aaron, not Ari, not Aaron. Arin. I'd never spelled it like that, but somehow I had. You've made a mistake, I whispered. I couldn't raise my voice. This isn't my gate. I don't belong here. The woman tilted her head slowly, too slowly, like her bones had to remember how. You arrived, she said. That's enough. I looked down at the card again and noticed the back was blank. No time, no date, no seat. Just a soft mark near the bottom corner. A circle inside a square. The same shape I'd seen in the child's drawing on the daycare wall. What happens if I don't go? I asked. Silence. But inside the booth, something moved. Behind her, in the dark recess behind the glass, something shifted. No footsteps, no noise, just the sense of movement without a mover. I stared too long. She turned her head slightly toward the shadow and nodded. A signal or a permission. I backed away slowly, clutching the boarding pass. She never stopped watching or listening. Even with no eyes, she saw more than she should. When I turned to leave, the floor shifted under my feet like I'd walked off a train and onto a platform that didn't believe in direction. The hallway behind me was darker now, or maybe the booth had made the light seem false, but I walked anyway, and as I left, I heard her voice one last time. Gate 47A reconfirmation complete. Final boarding pending. She didn't say it to me. She said it to the walls. I don't remember leaving. There was no door, no sound, no transition. Just a blink like a skipped frame, and I was elsewhere, sitting on a bench in Union Station, the real one, or something playing a very convincing version of it. People moved around me, chatter and footsteps, the high hum of announcements I couldn't make out, rolling suitcases, a child whining somewhere behind a pillar. Everything was normal, too normal, like a movie set trying to convince you it's real life. I blinked again. My bag was still slung across my shoulder. Same weight, same warmth, same faint sweat where the strap had pressed into my collarbone. But the air smelled off. Not bad, just not familiar, like the ghost of bleach, or the kind of floral used to mask something worse. And all the sounds, conversations, footsteps, laughs, had a layer under them, like they were being piped in from a speaker, just slightly out of sync. I stood and walked to the restroom. I didn't need to go. I just needed a mirror. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. That silence, not empty expectant, the kind of quiet that has corners. I washed my hands, watching the water curl down the drain like it was trying to avoid me. Then I looked up and saw my reflection. At first, everything checked out. Same face, same frayed edges of exhaustion, but my eyes weren't sitting right. One slightly too high, or maybe just slightly late. I blinked, and the mirror didn't blink with me, just a fraction of a second behind. Then I noticed the lighting. The fluorescence overhead flickered twice, once in the mirror, once in the real world, but not in the same order, like the mirror had become a memory, and I was the thing being remembered. I opened my bag to steady myself and found it, the boarding pass, still warm, still textured like soft, old leather, still stamped with my name in perfect red ink. AARYNMILES. Confirmed. I didn't scream because there was no fear left in me that still worked the way it used to. I folded the pass and tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat. Outside the restroom, the sounds resumed their carefully calibrated flow. A man called someone's name across the terminal, but I didn't recognize the syllables. They broke apart as they reached me, like a corrupted file trying to play. I walked, but I didn't feel myself walking. I felt watched by the lights, by the patterns on the floor tiles, by the ceiling vents that hummed just a bit louder when I passed. The world hadn't welcomed me back. It had just let me through, and not for long. I tried to forget. I told myself I'd been tired, stressed. Maybe I'd hallucinated it. Maybe I'd wandered into some disused wing of the station, drifted into sleep on a bench, and dreamt the whole thing. People rationalize worse every day, but it didn't matter, because the terminal came back with me. Not all at once, just cracks at first, tiny fractures in normality, the kind you could ignore if you were determined enough. The hallway in my apartment building, the one that leads to the laundry room, was longer. Just a few steps at first, then a few more, then it curved slightly, though I knew the floor plan hadn't changed. One night I followed it, and I walked for too long. There were no doors, just the hallway narrowing, ceiling getting lower, walls compressing around me like lungs, exhaling the wrong direction. I turned around and found myself standing outside my apartment again, key already in hand. No memory of walking back, no memory of turning. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, my bathroom mirror was fogged over, though I hadn't showered. When I wiped it clean, I saw condensation reform on the inside of the glass, tracing the outline of a number, 47A. At work, I started getting announcements over the intercom. The speaker crackled softly behind ceiling tiles. Every now and then, the garbled voice would say, "Gate 47A, please. Prepare for reconfirmation." No one else reacted, not once. I tested it. I asked coworkers, "Did you hear that?" They looked at me like I was asking about a fire alarm that hadn't gone off. Worse, I started waking up standing. At first, in my bedroom, then by the front door, then once, already in the hallway. At the threshold of the curve, I refused to walk again. My feet were bare. My hands were empty, but my coat was on. Sometimes I'll be walking through the city, and something will change. A traffic light flickers through the wrong sequence. Red to red again, then off. A bird freezes mid-flight across the corner of my vision, and resumes when I look directly at it. Once, I heard my name whispered through a white noise machine that wasn't plugged in, and all the while, I still have the pass. It's pristine. It hasn't aged. It hasn't curled. When I touch it, I swear I can feel a pulse. A heartbeat distant and slow, like something asleep beneath fabric. Sometimes I leave it in a drawer. Sometimes I bury it beneath books. It always finds its way back to the inside pocket of my coat. Always warm, always mine. It had been slipped under my door. No envelope, no markings, just the thick textured card, same as before, resting against the welcome mat I never actually welcomed anyone with. This one was colder. I don't mean the air. I mean the paper itself. It felt like it had been pressed between sheets of ice. I picked it up and turned it over slowly, already knowing what it would say. But this time, it wasn't misspelled, not even slightly. ARYNMILES. Final boarding confirmed. Gate 47A. NONRVR. It was embossed this time, stamped into the surface like a birth certificate or a death notice. Letters pressed deep enough to feel with your fingers. There was no date, no time, just a direction. That same geometric symbol was printed at the top corner. The square, the circle inside it, a target, maybe, or a portal, or a lock. I stared at it too long. The lights in my kitchen dimmed briefly, though nothing else flickered. No storm outside, no power outage, just acknowledgement. My phone rang 30 seconds later. No caller ID, just a blank screen. No ringtone, just the soft sound of white noise, crackling faintly like it was coming from inside a tunnel. I didn't answer. The phone hasn't rung since, but every time I check it, the time is 3:33. No matter when I look, that number has become a haunting, an address etched into the digital. I thought of throwing the pass away. I almost did. I carried it to the dumpster behind my building. But when I opened the lid, the garbage was wrong, too clean, too quiet. It didn't smell like anything. There was no weight, no contents, just a black, empty space that hummed when I leaned over it. I kept the pass. I didn't want to, but I did. That night, I dreamed of the terminal again. But this time, I wasn't walking. I was already seated. The same seat I swore I never touched. Hands folded, feet still. My head tilted back toward that impossible ceiling as the great board overhead began to rattle and flicker. One line glowing red. Gate 47A, boarding complete. And my name, perfect again, scrolling across the line below. Repeating, folding over itself like tape caught in rewind. I woke up gasping, but not screaming. I don't scream anymore. There's a clarity in inevitability, a silence so deep it makes its own sound. The pass is in my coat pocket again. I didn't put it there, but I checked. It's warm. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You felt it too. That moment when a hallway seems longer than it used to be, when the air in a stairwell goes quiet too fast, when a doorway doesn't lead quite where it should, when your name appears somewhere you didn't leave it. You've brushed against the edges of it, whether you let yourself remember or not. The terminal doesn't need you to believe in it. It just needs you to arrive. That waiting room with no exits, the one that smelled like old books that had no shelves. That bus that pulled into a station you didn't recognize and left before you could get off. That static in your headphones right before you fell asleep. Those weren't mistakes. They were invitations. You wouldn't have found this if you hadn't already passed through something. Maybe just for a moment. Maybe you forgot it the second it ended. Or maybe you never came back fully. And if the world feels off now, edges too sharp, corners too round, voices repeating things they haven't said yet, it's because part of you stayed, and part of it followed you home. You've seen the signs. You've heard the boarding calls that don't have names yet. You felt that soft pressure behind your eyes when you're alone. But the air feels crowded. You didn't imagine any of it. The terminal is real. It exists in the folds between certainty and suggestion, in the hum of a fluorescent bulb that never quite dies, in the difference between a reflection and a memory. And if one day you wake up already standing in front of a door that wasn't there yesterday, if a voice speaks your name through a wall that shouldn't have speakers, if your feet keep walking even after your thoughts say stop, don't sit down, don't take the pass, and for the love of whatever still remembers you, don't answer when the board lights up, because this story isn't just mine anymore. It's yours too. You understand. You always have.